You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, People-Centric leaders, it's Stephanie Anderson, and welcome back to another episode of the People-Centric Podcast. Sometimes I just feel like I have to jazz up that intro because I've said it a couple times, so you'll have to let me know if you liked that one or not, but only nice things, please. Thanks. So with me today, I have Diana Royalty and Philip Herzog, and I think we have a fun topic for you, and it is, what if your brain had an easy button? So, Philip and Diana, what if your brain had an easy button?
Well, I think I wouldn't have anxiety anymore. Crippling anxiety would go away. That would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe I would get more done. Maybe people would like me more. I don't know. There's a lot of paths I could go down.
I like, though, that you didn't go like the world domination path. You still chose all good.
I did choose. There is something there. That's true. I did choose to use it for good. You heard it here first.
There we go. Oh, funny.
That's funny. If I had the easy button, this is me speaking personally. Yeah, the transcript of my life would be so much simpler. Whether it was the internal or external monologue, it would be clean, it'd be concise, it would be straightforward, easy, breezy. Right? I don't know if you guys ever hear someone, or especially with AI notes, and you go and you realize, oh my gosh, I said all those words. I remember what I was trying to ask, which was just to simply say, did you get all that? Are we all clear? Are we going to do the same thing? So I think even, by the way, I'm answering this, I'm like, yes, if I had the easy button, it would be simple and straightforward.
I love how you answered that, Philip, because I think it even shows of like, oh yeah, sometimes we just get going on things and we don't realize we're so far down this other path or something that sometimes we're just like, wait a second, there's got to be a simpler way. But this topic came up because I think, at least for me, I've been in some conversations with people recently where people are trying to solve really complex problems, right? Or their organization is really complex, or something's changed and we're doing something and it just feels really hard for whatever reason. And I think one benefit that we get as the consultant sometimes is we get to step in from the outside into those situations, and we have a unique perspective on them because maybe we've not been in that situation as long as you have, or we've not been trying to solve this problem as long. And so sometimes for us, we'll see something really quickly that maybe they didn't, that feels kind of like an easy button of like, oh, wow, they solved it. And I'm going to share a secret. It's not because we're just like way smarter than everyone else or have knowledge that other people don't. I mean, I think we are pretty great. I think the reality is that like, it's just how our brains work as humans. And sometimes we get stuck. And we get stuck noticing what we notice and knowing what we know. And so that's why I think it's so helpful sometimes to pull in somebody from the outside who can give you a different perspective. But what we wanted to talk about today was like, how do you do that for yourself, right? And to share some things that we all do that help us get unstuck when we just wish there was an easy button and there was a simpler way. Like, what if you could trick your brain into actually finding that and acting like the easy button? So that is our topic and challenge for the day, is to try to explain this and kind of share, how do you get unstuck? How do you find the easy button? So maybe first, before we dig into that solution, Diana and Philip, like where do you see people often get stuck at work?
I think people can get stuck in a lot of places. I think it's usually like interpersonal relationships. I think people get really stuck with those because the stakes are a little higher at work and there's more things happening. I think that people get stuck on innovation and process a lot. I think people get stuck on tying their value to their pay. I don't know. I think there's work. Work is a key place to get stuck because you're in it a lot and there's high stakes and your brain just kind of this or that's it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially with like the relationships part, as I think sometimes we don't realize how quickly not only we maybe typecast someone else to say, oh, they always, they never, but we also do it to ourselves in those moments of like, oh, well, I always think this way, or I'm always going to react that way, or that's always going to be hard for me when someone else does it. And that's kind of an example of getting stuck because the reality is it's like nobody always, nobody nevers. And that includes you. And so, yeah, how you react and respond and show up, or what your relationships look like with other people are like fluid and dynamic. And it's not maybe always going to be that way, but you have to be willing to kind of challenge your brain to look for a different way.
I often think, very much in addition to what Diana said, I think some specific ways that those things manifest. I think expectations, whether that's your expectations of your team or your resources or your time. I think another is sometimes just the label of a conversation. So often we'll have people who freak out in a meeting. Oh my gosh, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And maybe someone who throws out a really interesting, wild idea is like, oh no, I'm not saying that we need to do this. I'm saying, let's talk about, is this even an option? Which is very different than a team that might hear this wild idea is what we're going to do tomorrow. And so I think timing of it all, I have 3 T's that I just use that I think typically are useful for communication. The 3 T's of timing, tone, and turf. And I think often those are 3 things that, if not done well, if we're not clear on those things or like where those take place, the timing, is at the right time? Are we being clear about the timing we're talking about for a need? The tone, maybe it's an amazing idea. Maybe you think I'm great at what I'm doing, but you're approaching me in a way that's really hard for me to access, or the turf, like wrong place. It's in front of 1,000 people, and maybe this should be a one-on-one conversation, or vice versa. We only had a one-on-one conversation when we should have involved more people. So I think oftentimes when we see people just spaz out or freak out and it doesn't feel easy, it's because a lot of unspoken expectations are in place. How we've communicated hasn't happened. We're not really clear on resources and what we need. And maybe just zooming really far out, we can get so muddled in all the details, we forget, what are we really trying to do? What's the point? What's the big goal? And so is the thing that we're talking about going to help us go do that? The easy button in my mind is often, will it help us reach our goals? Cool. Hit the easy button. Life is not always that easy, but I just think the biggest goal, if we're going to achieve that, how can we make that easier and tie back to our goals and our mission and our purpose? That's what easy thinking can help us lead to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I also think that's where people will get stuck, right? Because they'll be like, well, I've been working on this project or this thing or this new software or whatever for months and months and months, maybe even years. And so if you ask me to try to pull back out of that and focus on the mission, I'm like, that's what I'm doing, right? Like I have to keep going forward. And sometimes we have a hard time like getting that clarity in the moment or managing change, right? And you said something, Philip, that I really resonated with, was like the expectations change, right? Like we think it's going to go one way, and then we start working on it, and all of a sudden now it's not what we thought it was going to be, or now we're realizing it's going to take more time, resources, effort than we thought. And so we just start getting bogged down by all of that, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And just like, that's where I'll often see people get stuck. It's like, it's not what we expected it was going to be. And now I'm just trying to decide, like, do I just have to accept that this is so hard and it's never going to be better until it's completely done? Or we just have to abandon it, and then we get stuck in the like lost cause fallacy of like, well, if we give up now, then, or if we stop now, then we wasted all of that time and effort. And I think what we wanted to introduce today is maybe a third option, third question for that. Because when you get stuck in that thinking, it's what psychology calls the sucker's choice. It's you literally put yourself between a rock and a hard place, that it either is going to just be hard and terrible, and we all on our team just have to grit our teeth and bear it until this conversion happens with the software, or until the market's better, or until we can afford to hire someone. We just have to bear through that and not change anything and just wait for some magical outcome to happen. Or we have to completely change course, give up, lose time, effort, money, all those things. And again, like psychology says, like when you put yourself in that place, what you're telling your brain is only look for evidence that one of those things can be true. And your brain actually stops looking for evidence that something else could be true. So the mental easy button we want to introduce is actually like, you got to talk to your brain a little bit and actually ask your brain to show you something different. So the way that I've heard this framed before, and I've used it on myself when I have gotten stuck. So when I feel really stuck and it feels like there's just nothing I can do, right? For whatever reason, like either that relationship just feels too messy, or the project feels too far gone, or it just is too complicated. I will never solve it. We will never solve it. It'll take 20 years to solve it. I will stop and ask my brain essentially this question, and I will say it this way: brain, show me proof that this could be easier. Brain, show me proof that this could be easier. Or sometimes I'll even just say it like, brain, show me an easier way. And what neuroscience tells us is when you ask that question that way to yourself, right? Because you're like, aren't I my brain? I'm like, it's weird, right? But when you ask that question to your brain, you're triggering something in your brain to look for other evidence, right? And it's kind of like the concept of, I don't know if this has ever happened to someone before, but whenever you decide to get a new car, right? And you've decided what kind of car you want, or maybe you're just dreaming about a new car and you've decided, here's the make, model, color, whatever of that car. What is very common is what inevitably happens is you start seeing that car everywhere. And it's not because all of a sudden everyone else also decided to get that car. The reality is the cars were always there. You just retrained your brain to start noticing them, right? So that same phenomenon you can apply to the problem you're stuck in at work, or your team is stuck in, is like, but you've got to tell your brain to focus on something else. You've got to say, brain, show me proof this could be easier. Brain, show me another way. So I know I just said a lot of things, but like, Diana, Philip, like, have you ever done something like this before? How has it worked for you to get unstuck using like a brain trick like that?
I think that my brain tends to go all or nothing. I'm one of those people that are very black or white. Like to me, gray shouldn't exist, right? I'm just that person. And I've noticed that when I come to a crossroads or a path that I can't get to, or an obstacle that I think is too big, I have learned through therapy, to ask myself, is there any gray? Or is there really only two options here? Or my favorite one that I've been asking myself lately is, are these barriers real or perceived? And I think that when I can ask some of those questions of myself, then I can mentally remove the barriers, or I could say like, oh, there's actually 13 options, not two. Yes, there is gray in this situation. This barrier might be real, but I probably need to go have a conversation to see if it actually is or not, right? And so I think that I do it to myself when I feel like I can't move something forward. And I also am one of those people that I want to get stuff going really quickly. So if I feel myself keep hitting a wall and I'm like, oh, I can't run through this wall, I have to stop and say, why am I not able to run through this wall? And it's usually because I have some perceived barriers or some black and white thinking or something in my brain that just like won't get past. And so, yeah, if I can ask myself some really smart questions and just sort of say, like, what is bothering me? Why can't I get past this? It does help me get past it.
Yeah, I like that. And I like even how you frame that of like when I'm at an impasse, like how do I ask myself a good question to know, yeah, which way I want to go, and like is the barrier I'm even feeling real, which might feel like a very like odd question to ask yourself. You're like, well, of course it's real. It's a like it's in front of me, and you're like, well, okay, maybe it's there, but like did you accidentally in your brain maybe make a mountain out of a molehill, and in your head this is a 10-foot wall you'd have to scale, when in reality maybe it's a 10-foot wall but it's like super super thin so you could just like walk around it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or maybe like it's not as tall as you thought, and if you ask someone for help they could hoist you up over it, you know. I think that was a really a wise and interesting way to think about it. And same like in therapy, my therapist will help me process through things. And that's why I think it's helpful to have someone you can talk to about it, but also to learn just to ask yourself these questions and like, yeah, like show me an easier way.
I also, because of some of my black and white thinking and because of just my brain in general, I also have trained myself to recognize when my reaction is above a 5. I call it above a 5, right? So if reactions are a scale of 1 to 10 and my reaction or emotion is above a 5, I know it's not about the thing that I'm talking about. So I'll take a step back and be like, okay, I obviously reacted to that. Why did I react to it? Is it because there's barriers? Is it because I want to move something forward? Is it because it's against what I think we should do? Like, what's the mental thing happening that's causing me to react so strongly? And can I get past that? Like, can I recognize it for what it is and move something forward without my reaction getting in the way? So yeah, it's all of those little like tricks to know when you're the barrier and the barriers aren't real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I was also thinking like through like, okay, when have we seen or maybe some examples of like when people get stuck in like why is it so hard to even ask that question of like, yeah, what's the barrier and how is that real? Because I'm thinking of one client we work with in particular that's been really working for years to try to solve a problem in their organization, and it's gotten very complicated, right? Like as you can imagine, if you were trying to do something for years in your company, it's probably a pretty big deal. It's gotten very complicated. And one question that I think they're trying so hard to figure things out, and people are starting to say things like, I feel like I'm just beating my head against a wall, and it just doesn't feel like there's any solution except for spending X amount of gajillion more dollars, or we just are going to have to hire all of these people, or we just have to admit that it didn't work. And I think asking the question like, well, what would it look like if this was easy? I think it's a in theory an easy question, and in reality I think it's hard because our brains also tend to overcomplicate things, right? And for many of us, and those of you listening, you're probably like a working professional who's really good at your job and good at what you do, and you've built skill and expertise, and sometimes that's the thing that's getting in the way of even asking that question, because you're like, no, like we may not ever consciously say it this way, but like if I'm working on it or if my team's working on it and we can't solve it or I can't solve it, then this must be just the hardest thing anyone's ever tried to do. It must be super complex. And you could be right. Maybe you are discovering some new cure or something that no one's ever done before. I'll just speak for myself. Like my I'm not doing rocket science most days. I'm not finding cures for things. But there are days where I feel like, gosh, this is just, it's so complex. It's so hard. And I think if I start getting stuck there, this is a powerful question for me is like, well, what would it look like if it was easy? And realizing that sometimes I overcomplicate things. I make it actually more complex or harder than it needs to be because part of my brain, like I'm a very achiever oriented person. I'm a very like success and significance oriented person that in my mind and I like a challenge that it should be harder than this. So if something is easy, I almost dismiss it because it's just like, well, that's too simple. I should be thinking of smarter things or more complex things. And sometimes I have to ask myself, what would this look like if it was easy? And realize I don't need to do 15 steps. I could just do those two. And that would be just as fine as doing it the other way. Like in reality, those two things are going to get me the same result. Yes, there's nuance and variance, and I'm hearing myself say it because if I was listening to me right now, I'd probably disagree a little bit. But like at the end of the day, like you were saying, Philip, like sometimes we just have to go back to like what is actually the goal we're trying to accomplish, what actually is the mission, and is there an easier way to do that? Or is there another way we've not considered if we're feeling really, really stuck? Did we overcomplicate it?
I think that with the question of easy too, as both of you were sharing, there was this thought where I think that maybe there's oftentimes too, things are just really hard or difficult or not pleasant to do. So not to confuse the easy with, oh gosh, this just naturally is going to click in and automatically be successful. Because I think a lot of work is just not automatic. So don't hear easy with automatic and straightforward. But I think easy is, oh, we can do this. It doesn't have to be the hardest thing. And one of the biggest barriers to more easy ideas moving forward in the workplace, Stephanie, just like you said, I think it's that so many people can have some experiences in the past where things didn't quite work out. So in your mind, you create universal rules that might just have been situational outcomes for a few different reasons. So kind of deploy your nuance. And I often think of if you've ever watched Looney Tunes, right? Where Wile E. Coyote is chasing the Roadrunner. I always thought as a kid, Wile E. Coyote is always so close to getting the Roadrunner, but he only tries the Acme rocket once, or the Acme trampoline super Roadrunner net catch-a-madoo once. And I thought, man, if he just tried it 3 times, maybe he would get better at this whole thing. So he's doing the same thing again and again and again, but in a different way in which he's not able to actually build the skill to do the thing. So if we were consulting, Wile E. Coyote or us, we would say, try the same Acme method a few more times in a row to really test it out, right? Things get easier with time. So maybe it's a little blend of the things. And if you're trying to catch the Roadrunner using every tool at your disposal, you probably never will because you can never master 1,000 Acme products. Find the first 2 or 3 and get really good at those. So sometimes the easy answer is to do less things and to do those few really well, which to your point, I think that's why we tie back to goals so often, because many teams we have could probably have many easy answers, but they're trying to come up with 25 easy answers at once, which gets really complicated because now you can't do everything well and you can't prioritize. And if everything's on fire, nothing's important. So just the final round out there to say, sometimes the easiest thing to do is actually to step back and just do less, which gives you more space and time to do things well.
Yeah, so well said. So well said. Yeah, when you were talking, Philip, I was even thinking through things where I'm like, oh, where am I maybe trying to do 15 things at once instead of like 5 and then the next 5 and then the next 5 because that's still accomplishing 15 things. I don't have to be doing all of them at the same time. And I've probably just created some internal rule for myself that says successful people can manage all multiple things at once and or some version of that I don't think we realize we do that. So yeah, the question of like, what would this look if it was easy? I've heard people on teams say, well, if I could just focus on this, that would make it easier. And when we say things like that, like that's impossible. And I think like sometimes we need to take the pause instead of just being like, haha, wouldn't that be nice? What a beautiful fantasy you're living in. Be like, oh, okay, what would that actually look like? Like, what if we did just do it one thing at a time? And the reality, I think maybe why we discard it is because that might mean we go slower. And our American brains do not like that answer generally, right? Like we don't like what if we did fewer things this year? Because our teams are like, and we think as leaders, like, no, we got to do it all. Like I remember one time in a strategic planning session with a leader, the team was throwing out all these amazing ideas of like what they could work on and what they could do. And then I'm like, okay, which do you want to prioritize for this year? And they all kind of turned and looked at their leader, and the leader went, let's do them all. And it was like this rallying cry. And for a half second, the team was like, yeah. And then I said, okay, so let's put dates on all of these things. And then they were like, oh, yeah, we probably can't make 15 new things and do all of those other things. So yeah, what would it look like just to do one of those things at a time? And how could you reprioritize this? Yeah, what if it was easy? What if we scaled, but we might have to accept that we don't do as many things, or it might mean we have to stop doing some things, or honestly, it might mean we need to like give up on that project or task or put it away for now and be like, yeah, it's just not working. And we just keep trying to run more things through the machine, and the machine is not designed that way. Or maybe we just can't afford that change right now. Maybe we can't add somebody to our team. And that's what the easy button would be. It'd be like, well, let's just hire somebody. I feel like I hear that one a lot. It's like, if we just hired this role, then everything would be easier. You're like, oh, okay. Well, then let's talk about what would that job actually do, and how would you train someone to do that job, and like dig into it and find out like that could be your solution. But then you've also got to be real about the time in which that would happen, and can we afford that, and what would that look like on our team dynamic and some of those pieces. So
And I know we're talking about like how to make it easy, but I also want to remind people that like there's a real beauty and a real value to simplicity. I mean, but like Steve Jobs built a whole career on it, like his whole thing was about making it simple, making it user friendly, making it, integratable into our lives, making it an extension of ourselves. Like there is something really amazing about making something simple. And I think normal humans struggle to make things simple. That's why Steve Jobs was so innovative, right? That's why it was so different. And of course, Steve had his problems, right? I'm not saying he was like the master of all masters. I'm just saying, like, I think there is something to that sort of thinking that, like, let's streamline it and make it work how we actually work. Let's build a system and integrate it well. Let's remove all the things that aren't serving us. And I think let's make a don't list just as much as a do list, right? I think those types of things lend themselves to simplicity. And sometimes we forget that there's extreme power and beauty in simplicity. And it makes us better if we can think more simply.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that. Maybe that's another good question to ask your brain. It's like, brain, show me what it would look like if this was simpler, right? Maybe easier is a hard word. What if this was simpler? What if this was straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if this was just a straightforward decision? What would I do? Right?
Yeah.
And help your brain think about another thing and start seeing different things, right? Back to the car example. Again, those cars were always there. Your brain just has to filter so much because you're taking in like 11 billion inputs a second, and you can process like 50, right? And so your brain has to filter things. You have to sort through stuff. Like if you're a leader of a company, you've got 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people. You can't be thinking about what everyone needs in one moment. So your brain is filtering. But sometimes you might need to ask yourself and like take that step back of like, show me something different. Show me another path. Show me another way. Show me if it could be simple. Show me how this could be easier. And again, like just like challenge your brain to start seeing other options and start seeing other things. And I would also say, you heard Diana and I both mention therapy, or like if you have a confidant at work, like if you're really, really feeling stuck about something, like it does really help to pull in another person. And this is where like I think our team is excellent and awesome at being that person in the room for a lot of different businesses, to be like, yeah, like maybe I do need some external and somebody with fresh eyes to see this, or who just has a different perspective than me. Like I'll say, Diana, you're someone I like to ask a question to, because although I think we're very, very aligned, we think about things very differently. Our approach is different. We have different strengths. And so Diana is somebody, if I'm really stuck on something, like I would take it to Diana and be like, Diana, help me see another way. Help me see it. Help me see another solution, because my solution is we should just punch everybody and just get mad and, give up and just tell people just tell everybody what to do, and they should just be grateful.
Sometimes that's right.
So,
yeah. Same for me though. Like I love your ability to come up with all of these great ideas and just think through things differently. And your brain is different than mine. So yeah, maybe that's another key thing, is like ask somebody who's different than you, how they would do it, what they think about it, how they're seeing the situation. I think that's a smart way to get your brain unstuck too.
Yeah. Because it's almost the question like, well, what if I was wrong? Like, what if I was wrong about this?
Yeah.
Is I think another one that I've asked myself before, of like, what if I was wrong? Maybe I've been gung-ho going toward this. Maybe I've been leading my team this way, and now everyone's grumbling and complaining behind me. What if I was wrong? And it's not, saying, okay, I'm going to let go of all my morals and lose that. No, it's just saying, like, again, brain, show me a different way. Show me how this could be easier. Show me how this could be simpler. What if there's another way than how I'm doing this, just to help you get unstuck? So, well, I think hopefully this was an interesting conversation for you to listen into, just like a little peek inside, I think, our brains and things that we're talking about on our team, and what we're learning. And so I'd say if this sparked something in you, definitely go like start doing some research on like neuroscience and neuroplasticity. This is where I will get nerdy about things like this. But also, like, if you're listening to this and you have felt stuck about something, I hope this was helpful. And again, know our team is here for you more than just the podcast. If you're a podcast listener, if there's something that you'd want to bounce off of one of us, like listen to the outro and send an email, and Diana can get you connected to whichever one of us you would like to bounce it off of to talk about that. Maybe we could be helpful to you. So thanks for listening. And really quick, before you go, we have two exciting things happening in the People Centric world right now. The first is we have an awesome webinar coming up. It is free. If you do strategic planning as a team, you've thought about doing strategic planning, you used to do strategic planning, or maybe you're even wondering, like, why the heck would I do strategic planning? We've got an awesome webinar coming up about like why most strategic plans fail. So we are going to teach you some things that will help you avoid pitfalls when you do strategic planning. So Diana, want to tell us the dates for those and how you sign up?
Yeah. So we have it in the show notes. There's links in there, but it is July, the end of July. We have 2 different times. So go check out the show notes, find the link, sign up. It is all totally free, and it's going to be a good time. Dawn's going to tell everyone how to do better strategic planning, which I think is great.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then the second cool thing, if you haven't heard us talking about this yet, is we wrote a book.
We wrote a book.
We wrote a book. Yeah. So Becoming People Centric, now available on Amazon. Go get yourself a copy and maybe a couple people you work with, and just leave it on their desks. It's a nice gift. But
book club.
You could have a book club. That'd be fun. I have a book club. You should have a book club. It's fun.
So fun.
But yeah, if you like what we talk about, you will love this book. I think it explains our framework and how we approach working in organizations to help them become people centric. So if you have not got a copy, jump on Amazon and get one.
Yeah. It's also linked in the show notes. So if you're like, I don't want to search Amazon for this book, you can find it right in the show notes.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening today. We hope this has been helpful, given you some new things to think about. And again, like Dan said, listen to all the show notes for details on how to get a hold of us, the webinar, the book, and we'll see you back here soon.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.